Reynolds from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Sean.
Hi, Paul. Nathan Boley was just saying that it's been a bit of a mental grind, all the one-goal games the team's played this year, and that he thinks the team's handling it really well. I know there's value in playing in the pressure cooker environment like that, but is there a point where it's preferable that your team starts getting a little bit more breathing room in games?
Yeah, like in every one, right? That would be a good thing. But it's not real in this environment. We see an awful lot of one-goal games. There is something to this. Everyone understanding the length of the season, just the sheer competitiveness every single night, and the pushback on the team that's down by 1 or down by 2. We've seen it with our own team. We've seen it with other teams. Fighting right to the last 60 minutes. So I would take a big lead. That would be nice. But I don't think we would ever get into that game and say, okay, it's 4-1. This just means this is how it should be. I think the other team, these are very, very competitive games. So the spread isn't a concern for me.
Go next to Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Weaver.
Thanks, Rigger. Afternoon, Paul. What's the update on Tucker Poolman and where the rest of the players' maintenance, or what kind of update?
We'll list them all the same. Either maintenance or it's not even maintenance. We're trying to get ahead of some of these things, and we don't think they're very significant. We think they'll be players. Tucker needs another day before we can get an assessment on him. We'll list him as upper body day to day. He may be on the ice tomorrow, and then again, he may not. The other guys, all the other players are expected to practice tomorrow.
We'll go next to Jeff Hamilton from the Winnipeg Free Press. Go ahead, Jeff.
Hey, Paul, you've given us, you've shared a different scouting report on different Canadian teams, Vancouver, Edmonton, kind of the style of play in which they play. You look at Montreal, and statistically, as a team, nothing really pops out. It seems like they do everything kind of good. Just what kind of game are you expecting against Montreal?
Yeah. And I really avoid doing this, but analytically, these guys are a very good team, right? And especially if you're running this off shot volume and quality of shots, they get to the slot. They don't give up much in their other end. They're very, very consistent with their game. Their penalty killing was absolutely on fire at the start of the year. So they are built off the back end, I would say, goaltender clearly, and then they've got good size and a real solid back end. They've got a lot of quickness. So that would be if I'm describing the Montreal Canadiens, of all sudden be a very, very quick team. And I don't think in the past we've handled that particularly well. The games that, the one-off that you have every year stands out. The game in Montreal, they put up 50 some odd shots on us. That's them at their best. Very, very quick. They knock an awful lot of pucks down. I think they're more in a position to be physical now this year than they have been in the past, but they weren't a particularly physical team. Now they can be, but they've still got that core of kind of Gallagher style players who are really hard on pucks. They hunt pucks down. There's no place to slow down the game or find easy transition on them. That would be how I view them.
We'll go next to Stephen Wino from the Associated Press. Go ahead, Stephen.
Hey, Paul. I asked Andrew Kopp about kind of the high-scoring North Division, and he said that all you coaches probably missed those 2-1 games. I'm curious, is there anything about this kind of high-scoring division and this kind of play that's enjoyable as a coach, and kind of how do you coach for that?
I want the balance right in my life. I think I spent the first 15 years of my career grinding defense only. And then kind of got to Winnipeg, and there's a little more skill now in the lineup. And I like the offensive part of the game, right? I like watching that. Where I think the coach is trying to fit himself in the Canadian division is in the transition, right? So we'll I think all these guys are letting their team make plays, right? Where if a guy turns a puck over and I see what he's trying to do, if there was a method to it, if there was a rightness to it, pucks are going to get turned over. You can live with that. But then you're looking for that willingness and that compete. To play on both sides of the puck, that quickness to transition. We feel we're at our best. We're very quick to transition, which we sell as coaches is if you do that, you're going to get more offense, right? But we have now up front probably more players or as many players built on offense, but I would say more players built on an offensive game. That's how they came into the league. So you can't stifle that. I'm not, trying to turn a 40-goal guy into a grinder. I just like him to consider doing both.
We'll go next to Paul Friesen from the Winnipeg Sun. Go ahead, Paul.
Hey, Paul, how much do the standings play into things for you, if at all? Do you see more opportunity in certain games, or do you ignore them?
Yeah, you know what? I haven't felt that opportunity after we ran those first 3 games in Ottawa. You know, you might thought there was a place that you could get a game and level out your bench, or actually in some situations let's say play our backup, but our backup numbers are crazy. So no, but the play, you know, the teams that are close around us, you know, you might watch your goaltending rotation in that, right? So it's not necessarily the back-to-back, but it doesn't work for us because LB's been so darn good. You're just keeping your goalies in a rhythm. I don't find yet an easy game. I don't know that I admit if I did, because I wouldn't want to have to tell you the team that it was. But the loosest game we played was probably Toronto, right? And then part of that is when they touch the puck, they cause problems for you. But I found these to be incredibly competitive, and there's something more to it. There's more possession changes on 5-foot plays. Like there was a play in the Vancouver game in the first period the other night. I think the possession changed 4 or 5 times in about an 8-foot area. And I couldn't figure out if we couldn't get a handle on it, if they couldn't get a handle on it. That seems to be the way the hand skills are so good that people are knocking pucks down all over the place. So it's kind of an agitated game. Like from behind the bench, you're never feeling like you're in complete control of the game. So I haven't found that weak spot. When you play 82 games, there are stretches in your calendar where you're going, okay, those are the teams that are really struggling, or they've sold players off or whatever. I don't feel that at all. Now, we haven't played Toronto and Montreal enough to get a full feel of this division. But I haven't felt that in any of the games that we played, that you got to be on or you don't win.
We'll go next to Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Sean.
Paul, other than maybe Toronto, I think your team's the only one that has kind of really avoided that kind of full team sag for a couple games or maybe longer, where you seem to entirely get away from your game and struggle to get it back. I know that you guys are really, really key in on not losing 2 in a row and trying to bring that focus strongly after a loss. Is it that's helped you avoid that, or what is it your team has done to kind of stick close enough to your game that you're not getting lost in the woods for a little stretch?
So I'm going to say it's leadership, and I'm going to say it has a big part to do with our season last year. We went through that year last year with, you know, whatever it is 60% of your blue line's not there on opening night, and then you just get crushed by injuries. And we stayed in the fight, and that became our game, right? Just stay in it. Whether you lost 1 or you lost 2, you wound yourself back up to come in and compete the next night. And I still think that's in our room. I think that's how they prepare in the room when they're going out. There's a little bit of an edge. I don't think, like, we're not pounding the table here at any point in the season saying, hey, we're rolling now. Like, we've been great. We've felt a lot of scratching and claw in all of these games. So you never get that comfortable feeling. You come off a win, you're not thinking, hey, now we're rolling, tomorrow's going to be easy. And other than a couple pieces where periods that we didn't like, we haven't really lost a game. There was 2. We didn't like our Toronto game. We didn't like our Vancouver game at home. But even in the other loss in Calgary, after the 4-day break, we played pretty darn hard in that game. So I don't think we've been on a roller coaster, and I think that has a big part of it. We haven't played well enough to get on the high end of a roller coaster, and we've competed hard to stay off the low end.
We'll go next to Murat Atesh from The Athletic. Go ahead, Murat.
Thanks, Gregor. Paul, when you're never able to be sure you're winning or sure you're losing, and mentally you're always kind of in it through the whole game, is there a cost to that? Is there anything you can do to help the mental recovery, or is that just part of the job and that's the expectation now?
I would say, Murat, we are aware of our off days and how we would handle that. So not during the game, right? That's great training ground, because it's a version of playoff hockey, that tension in every shift and every goal, right? That momentum swing that you have to fight through. But we've been careful with our off days. If we didn't like our game, you know, the coach wasn't losing his mind on players. And then if we won a game, we weren't, you know, having any parades. But we're careful with the emotional recovery too, deal with the loss, and try to make it more technical, the positioning, and not saying, hey, we're not competing hard enough or not getting into the emotion, but the players have played hard enough. I haven't had to do that. So all I would say is on our off days, we're trying to manage our emotions just as much as we're on our game days.
Just a couple more for Coach. We'll go next to Jeff Hamilton from the Winnipeg Free Press. Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, in a traditional year, if you were to go on a long winning streak, it would be against a number of different opponents. And in this season, where the schedule is set up, where you're seeing a lot of the same team over and over in some cases, is it a challenge, or is it, I don't want to say not a challenge, but putting together streaks of wins?
I don't know the answer to the question. I mean, it's a good question, right? You're not seeing an awful lot of them. Because I've looked at that 2 or 3 times where if you go onto the NHL.com and you can sort the league by winning streaks, like there's a team with a 5, right? I think Tampa had 5 there about 7 or 8 days ago. And then it was a 3, a 2, a bunch of, a handful, and then it was 1 for the long. There just aren't long streaks going on. I think LA's got 5 right now, and that's a big deal. But it doesn't feel like that's going on around the league where a team can really, really get hot. And I think the more is if the teams are fairly even, the more you see them, the more even it becomes. Like if there's a team clearly that's not in the class of everybody else, and you play them 3 or 4 times in a row, maybe you go on a run. But I think it becomes more and more difficult to go on a run as you see teams over and over again, and those teams are reasonably talented even.
And final question to Ken Weeb from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Ken.
Well, just with the American League now up and running, how will you manage going forward? You don't want a guy like Gustafsson being out too long. And how do you find the balance between, when the guy's next man up at his position versus the, top 6 minutes they would get at the American League?
And then we have the travel issue that goes with it, right? We're not in the same provinces, so crossing borders. And then what happens if we get on a run and we need to call a guy up? And all of those other things, travel and commercial and those. So the answer to that is we kind of feel like we just sort of got healthy here a little bit, so we can start asking that question about how do we start using our tax. But you're right. We'd like to get these guys playing games that are eligible to go down and play games. At the same time, Jets have to come first, and we have to make sure we've got ourselves backed up.
Thanks very much, Coach.
Okay, guys.
Thanks, everybody.